Welcome, everybody, to episode 38 Behind the Scenes of Blessings. So thankful that you've tuned in. Like we said in the last, you are gaining on a year of being with me. God bless you guys. You've heard so many of my horrible jokes and all this repetitive stuff, but you've also heard amazing sit down chats with some of the best men and women and even some kids and their miraculous stories, their awesome journeys. And today being Memorial Day, again, we recorded this morning with Coach Davey Gillum, and that was awesome in itself. Got to learn some things about him that I didn't know, and I appreciate his heart. And then tonight, on Memorial Day evening, we're recording with Coach Shannon, and I want to wish again everyone a happy Memorial Day. Remember those that have fought and died for our country. Freedom's not free, never has been free. So please, please be thankful. With that being said, it's now time for my awesome introduction. Uh, Absolutely one of an awesome, awesome mentors and coaches there is. Someone that loves a challenge, but not just from a competitive stance. He wants to help make people better. That's his desire. However, he can help. That's where he wants. It's his love for people, his love for kids, his love for the school system, and someone that's been very inspirational to me, influential to me. And I am on a list of hundreds, if not thousands, of people that can say the same. Man of the gridiron, but also a man of family. With that being said, the one and only Coach Keith Shannon. Coach, how are you, sir?
Really, really well. And I thank you very much for that introduction. It is wonderful to have the opportunity to get to speak with you, Chase, and just to catch up. It's been a minute since we've had the opportunity to talk, so I'm looking forward to the conversation that we're going to have.
Man, me too, sir. And I'll tell you how much I respect Coach Shannon. I would like to think I'm a grown man. I got a kid, got all this stuff, hundreds and hundreds of miles away from Coach. But if he looked at me right now and said, "Doggone it, Lee, get down, get your feet moving," man, I'd do it. I'd do, I'd do it in a heartbeat.
Uh,
Uh,
and
love
I
this guy.
understand that. I've got great relationships with the gentlemen that were football coaches of mine. Coach Karis Stone Cipher, Coach Donnie Branham, Coach Don Edwards, Coach Lee Coleman. And I feel much the same way if I meet those men on the street. It's sir, how are you doing? It's wonderful to see you, coach. Whatever they, anything that direction or directives that they help me with, advice or whatever, I value very, very deeply.
And I struggle. I worked, I can't remember what school it was, but I worked with a former coach that coached me. And I kept calling him coach. And he looked at me and he said, "Hey, my name is," and he gave his first name. He said, "Call me that." And I was like, do I have to? Like, if I can get away from that. And, somebody, when I worked at Robbins one time, said, we were talking, it was me and Mike Carroll was talking about you. And he said, and I love Mike, good man.
Yes,
He
sir.
said, "Have you talked to Keith lately?" And I said, "Who in the world's Keith?" And he said, "Well, Keith Shannon." I said, "Buddy," I said, I'm glad you got that bravery." I said, "Man, as soon as I look at him and call him Keith or just say the word Keith, he's going to pop out of the shadows and I'm done for." I just am. But anyway, man, excited to sit down with you. It's been a bit. I would say I don't know that I've seen you since I moved from Tennessee. So that's been at least 7 years. But it's great to catch up. You haven't aged a bit. Look great as always.
Well, I appreciate that. The body and the joints tell me otherwise, but it's very nice of you to say.
How's the family doing?
Oh, we're blessed. Honest to goodness. Welcome to our first grandchild. Yeah, got a 9, 10 month old, 9 month, I guess, grandbaby boy, and that is Heath and Jessica's son.
Wow.
Harvey Lee Heath Shannon. So just the joy of everybody's day when he's present. That's for sure.
Man, and the thoughts that your kids are old enough to have grandkids, that's a stake in the heart right there. But
Yeah.
congratulations. So, and I'm sure Miss Donetta's over the moon excited too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Everybody is. So it's like I say, it's a joy to just have the opportunity to spend some time with him and with his mom and dad, and kind of relive some of the things that we had went through with as young parents, and to see them going through it and know the joys that they're going to experience and the struggles that they're going to have. But that's just part of the joy of getting older. And this grandparent thing, I think I could like that. That brings out a different side of me. That's for sure. I surely do love that little boy.
So, have you and Miss Donetta decided your names? Are you Papa, Pap?
Grandpa and grandma.
Well, look at that. We're going with the classics.
Absolutely.
All
Absolutely. That's a
right.
history teacher, so that's the way it's got to be. So,
I love that. Ain't doing no gee gee, nothing
yeah.
like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that. All right. A lot of people know your history as far as your coaching and all the titles, the playoffs, championship, all that stuff. But so interested in the man. You have had an influential hand in so many young men's raisings. You've been a mentor, been a father figure to so many, which would make people interested. What was your raising like, Coach? What was your childhood like?
Well, I mean, just a good, hardworking Christian family upbringing. Harvey and Judy Shannon, my parents, they had their family at a very young age. I'm the last of three children. My dad was 24 whenever I was born, and he had already, they'd already had two before. So mom and dad got married in '66, I guess, and so they started having kids pretty quickly. My sister was born in, well, I better not say that on air. She's older than me, so I won't do that. But anyway, I was born in '72, so they'd already had all of us three children at that point. And, so much of, I think my sister, my brother, and myself comes from um, just the home that they created for us. And the fact of the matter is that it was a hard working family, and raised up right here on the family farm. And interesting thing, I guess, and it kind of is important to me. Every job that I've ever had has been within a driving distance of where I live right now. um, I guess I am the fifth generation living on this farm.
Wow.
So, Heath will be the sixth, and hopefully Harvey Lee will be the seventh whenever they get their house built. So, it goes all the way back probably into, well, obviously the late 1800s with John Taylor that lived right up on the side of the mountain. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So, how big is the farm? Like,
Dad, I guess when Dad had it, whenever I was a kid, it was about 53 acres at that point. But he has bought other parcels of property that are adjacent to it, and that was, a part of the farm in the 1920s. It had just been divided off. So now I guess it's upwards of 140 acres.
wow.
But the thing about our farm is very little of it is flat, and I guess that's one of the things that, talking about tough. We some people call it building fence for a farm. We rappelled down the sides of the hill using a barbed wire to get
Yeah.
it up and down. It was, but I just, those are good memories that I have. That's for sure. I've enjoyed it, and any day that I can get out and do something on the place is a wonderful, wonderful day.
Yes, sir. That's awesome stuff. Sounds like a fundraising too, an enjoyable raising.
It was.
So, as far as an academic standard, you are a teacher. You've raised boys, and they have lives of their own. Okay, does that instillment of keep your grades up, does that start with your parents?
It does, and my parents, the big thing that they wanted for us to do was our best, and that was pretty much it. And they had great expectations for us, and I think that they instilled that in us. It was more intrinsic. It didn't ever have to be extrinsic. They just had high expectations, and it instilled in each of us that we were capable of doing anything that we set our minds to. So you from a football player standpoint have heard the sayings. We're not going to get in the back seat for anybody for anything. We're going to take our place and succeed, because the only thing that is keeping us from success, whether it is academic, athletic, fiscally, financially, anything like that, success it starts with your availability to be able to do the job. And that was it. It was never going to be from a lack of effort in any endeavor, whether it's academics, working on the farm, or athletics. That's just the way that it was.
Absolutely. So, your mom and dad, your dad, are we talking, is farming his income?
No, he was a railroader.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, the little farm that we're on was always more of a hobby, but it was a very important hobby for us. We've gotten upwards of about 30, 35 head of cattle running different times. Um, so it was just always, that was just something that we did in the evenings, on the weekends, things like that. But no, he was a railroader, and I can remember many mornings, and props to Coach Gillum as well, because now I don't mean to chase rabbits or anything here either,
You're
but
good.
I think Coach Gillum and I, we had very, very similar backgrounds, in that such a deep admiration and appreciation for our fathers and the hard work that we grew up witnessing. I know I've heard Coach Gillum talking about, in the interviews at different points in time, um, what we do physically is not hard. It's not demanding mentally, maybe, yes, but, your dad getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, going out the steps, slipping on the ice, but getting to the car and taking off and staying gone until 6, 7:30, sometimes at night. That was hard. So I appreciate that, and I always understood that that was what the example that had been set for me. So what I do, as a job was never that physically demanding, obviously, but that's where my background was.
Right. And there was a coach I was blessed to be around maybe 3 4 years ago, about 30 minutes west of Indy. He actually just retired this year. Um, he always told the staff, he'd say, "Look, if we work in the school system, we are basically getting paid to talk. It's not physically demanding. There are much more physically demanding careers." He said, "But don't mistake it.
Yes.
Just because we are paid to talk, don't forget we are also paid to care."
Oh yeah,
And
absolutely.
I love that input as well. Um, so, from an athletic standpoint, obviously you are known as a coach, and from an exercise standpoint, we'll get to that. What, as looking at your high school career, what all sports are you involved in?
Football and weightlifting. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, those were the two things that I gravitated towards, and I guess that it was just the fact that hitting a baseball, dribbling a basketball required skill development that I had not had, and football was just about being physical, and that was something that, in the 80s, whenever young men was growing up, those are the games that we played on the playground at Robbins Elementary. And I gravitated towards that. I always did and enjoyed it.
So you went to Robbins Elm Sunbright High. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
cool. Is that a location thing? Like, did you all move, or what is that?
No, it's as a matter of fact, from where I'm at, we are just this side of the Scott County, Morgan County line. Actually,
Okay.
my dad's property at the head of the mountain, they call it Little Mountain. It goes all the way up, and that is the boundary. So from Sunbright High School, Sunbright Elementary School, we are about 22 minutes. From Robbins Elementary, we're probably 22 minutes. I mean,
Okay.
that's the difference, the distance there. Funny story, I guess, and you know, I'm Coach Diggs is a legend in Scott County, and rightfully so. Had the opportunity to meet the man, and his brand of football was successful, and it was wonderful. And coming up, and I think my eighth grade year was 1985. That's when Scott High was at its peak, and I was going to Scott High. I was going to play for Coach Diggs, and I was all in. And funny story, really. My cousin, Scott Martin, may God rest his soul. Scott and his dad, my uncle Bill Martin, had come over to the house and we was watching the '85 Chicago Bears playing the Super Bowl. And Scott, was the player of the decade for Scott High School in the '80s. Um, well, anyway, they were talking, and if you knew Scott, he had a great personality, and what he um, what he said was, is he asked me if I was going to play high school football, and I was like, yeah, I am, and he's like, well, where are you going to play? And I said, well, I'm going to go to Scott High, and he said, you're not big enough to carry our water buckets. And I just laughed, and I'm like, yeah, I'll show you, but now I often wonder if mom didn't hear that and start thinking, well, maybe he is too small to carry the water buckets. And the next thing you know, I'm heading to Sunbright. So that may not be how it ended up happening, but that's what I always joke about.
Man, Coach Diggs, again, God bless him.
Yes.
When I first started at Huntsville, Coach Stephen Burris brought me on, and then Coach Mark Profit. I was there with him for a good while. Um, Coach Jack Diggs would always scoot up, at game night, and I was big into weightlifting then, and I had our D linemen were big, and he scooted up to me one day and he looked at me and he said, "Lay," and I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "You got them big, but do you have them mean?" And I looked at him and I said, "We'll find out tonight." And he said, "Yes, we will." And
Yeah.
he just kept right on going. And we got whooped that night, so we found out pretty good. But love the man. Um, what position are you in football high school?
Played running back and a corner back.
Yes,
You know,
sir.
and, we had some success whenever I was there. When we got there, fall of '86. Um, is my head football coach in high school was Don Edwards, and it was his first year as the head coach. Sunbright had went 0-10 the year before I had gotten there as a freshman. Obviously, as a freshman, I didn't get to play a whole lot, but the thing that Coach Edwards did was he brought that expectation of toughness, and I can remember just over and over and over, never quit, never quit, never, and it just that was what everything kept coming back to. He did not care the score. He did not care anything about anything that was going on. It was always about effort and never ever quitting. And that just is something that resonated with us. And I think that he instilled that in his earliest football teams. And uh, we were able. My freshman year, we were able to beat Coalfield, which at Sunbright, and now Coalfield is still a wonderful, wonderful, top 5 in the state of Tennessee football program, and they were still good back in the '80s. That hasn't changed. So we were able to beat Coalfield my freshman year, and then my sophomore year, I think we went 2-7, 2-8, something like that. And then my junior year, we had the breakout year. Had a winning season, the first winning season that Sunbright had in some time, and it was wonderful. My senior year, we played a tough schedule, and we were 4-6, and it was the most disappointing thing in the world. And still to this day, me as a leader and as a senior, it's just disappointing. But that's just the way that it goes. And it was a wonderful experience to play high school football for Don Edwards and Lee Coleman. And that immediately, whenever that season, my senior year ended, I knew exactly what I was going to be doing. I was going to college to be a football coach, and that's where I was going to come back and coach.
Yes, sir. Before we go into college, the fascination with weightlifting. What was it about that at an early age that caught your eye?
Really, I guess it was a deal that I played football at 5'6", 55, 60 pounds my senior year. And the thing that I had just said it about in my mind, I could not, be 6 foot, but I could doggone sure not be weak. And so I was going to be as powerful as I possibly could. And that was just where I could go to do that. And I liked, once I got in there as a freshman, I really liked the way that it changed my physique.
Right.
But more importantly, I liked the way that it changed my mindset. It relaxed me. It
Yeah.
always has. Lifting weights is just something that I enjoy. Exercising, and not even so much lifting weights anymore, because now getting ready to be 53 here in a few short weeks. It's something that I still enjoy, and it still settles my mind to be physically active and just moving my body and exercising. And it's just something that, at 14 years old, I fell in love with. And again, a tip of the hat to Coach Edwards for having a structured, safe weight room in which his athletes could thrive and grow.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. I still say, well, I always say that weightlifting, exercise, cardio, whatever you want to group into that, is a amazing exit valve.
Yes.
Just, I tell people all the time, Faith has a better husband every day because I go to the gym before I come home.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, uh, my wife doesn't get a whole lot about what I do during the day. So if I come home and unload all that on her, I'm taking up my marriage time. So go to the gym, get on the elliptical, watch a movie, get a
Yes.
quick workout. You'll come home, everything will be good to go. Good
It,
job.
it is wonderful. And as I have moved into administration, and the stresses are quite a bit different. We'll sit in front of a computer much of our day, and on the phone organizing and just chasing rabbits, whatever which way they go. I have actually started spending my lunchtime at Huntsville weight room, and that is just I'll go in and I'm stressed, and I'll come out and I'm refreshed.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
love it. I did then and I do now. So
See that right there tells me the difference in my body type versus your body type because man, that lunch break is holy, and man, my ADHD kicks in. Caesar salad from Wendy's every single day, and I love the gym, but I'll get to you at 3:45.
yes, sir.
But absolutely, I get that 100%. And man, sitting in front of a computer, I've only had to do that just a couple times in my career. that's a whole other world of stress that people don't consider and think of. So I get that completely as well. You go to college. Forgive me. Are you Tennessee Tech?
Well, actually, the first 3 years that I went to college, I was at Rome State in
Okay.
Harriman, and you know, I worked my way through. I went to college on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I worked at Tennessee Coating, which is a little industrial coating facility in Wartburg, and I would work there Monday or Tuesday and Thursday, and most of the time Saturday, and much of the weekends on Sundays even, and kind of worked my way through there. Got married while I was finishing my last year in 1993 there at Roan State, and that was the one summer that 93 I did not go to college, and honest to goodness, I almost didn't go back. I got very, very comfortable. I loved being married, and I was working in that little job and making enough, and um, you know uh, me and my dad had remodeled a little mobile home. 19 I think it's a 1970s mobile home. It's probably, I don't know, 11 foot by 55 foot. And it was like a brand new one once we got finished doing it, and I was comfortable, and that was it. So, but then, at the prompting of my wife, Donetta, and mom and dad, I took off and went down and visited Tennessee Tech on orientation day, since I'd already been enrolled before I got married. And, I thought, well, I can do this. So I drove from Scott County to Tennessee Tech every day that I had class. And, it was about an hour and 45 minutes there, and it's an hour and 45 minutes back. Uh, and continued to work as much as I could whenever I was doing that.
Yes, sir. Um, I want to finish up the college thing before we get to the love story. I'm dying to hear it because, man, I love your wife. I got to work with her when I was at Robbins, and she's great,
Yeah, she is.
funny, um, very gullible though, man. She fell for every joke I've ever played in my life, and but man, loved it, loved it. Anyway, um, I'm guessing obviously you're majoring in education,
Yes.
um, and you're looking at history, right?
Yes. Um,
So I've got to know from one history guy to another, what was it about history?
just a genuine love of history, really, honest to goodness. It's the story of us. It's the story of, in my opinion, uh, a blessed nation of people. And it's a story that I loved sharing, with anybody who would listen. And, that's just something I loved it as a student. And yeah, I never saw myself as a teacher. Is just whenever I sat down and started looking at what avenues can I use to get to be a football coach. And, I knew it wasn't math. I knew that. I knew that, it probably wasn't science, and it wasn't English. So history is something that I just loved. I loved it in elementary, middle school, all the way through high school, had great teachers. And that's kind of how it unfolded for me.
Now, see, that there's two types of history buffs. It's either history or it's government. I bleed over into government. I like history. History's great, but I'm more of a government guy. Are you more on the history side?
Oh yeah, yeah, I am. And decisions that the leaders of our nations have had to make, and being able to break that down in front of a group of students and start to rationalize the causes and the effects of these decisions, and what impacts might they have, and knowing the answer. that, whenever we get there. So I'm definitely more of just the historical side rather than the political science.
Um, I I love history about certain things. And I don't have a rhyme or reason for that. Man, my favorite movie in the world came out December 25th, 1993. Tombstone. Kurt Russell,
Yeah.
Val Kilmer, Sam Elliott, all those. And man, when I found out, I think I was like 8 years old, that Tombstone was real. Oh man, that blew my mind. And I can remember sitting in Professor Prater's history class in college, and he announces starting next week we're going to go over Tombstone. And man, I thought Jesus was coming back. Just, oh, give it to me. Yes, God. And just that stuff. Uh, Government fascinates me. Just the making of it, how, and we'll never know the full details of how the government works. That machine is so much bigger than anyone really knows. Um, is that Miss Donetta?
It was. She stepped in for a moment and stepped right back out.
Stepped right back out of my life. God bless her heart. Um, but man, the ins and outs of it. Now, granted, I am more fascinated by the system, not so much the today stuff.
Yeah.
Because man, I'm not getting on it, but today's government and politics, it's not the cleanest stuff in the world. It's just not. And it's more opinion based than it is politics. Um,
And therein lies, I think, the one of the reasons. And if you ever had me in class, I would get on soapboxes every so often. And
yep,
you know the belief in our country, the belief in our system, regardless if we lean left or we lean right, the document that was written, our Constitution of the United States, is shorter than most, if not all, constitutions of major nations in this world. And it was made to be changed, modified, altered to fit the will of the people. Now, the people are the ones that are making the decisions whenever they are voting for these policymakers. Now, back to education. Compulsory education came in the earliest part of the 1900s, and as an educator, you know, we educate all. Public education educates all. And I ask students, why do we educate all? And they'll be puzzled for a moment. And for me, the answer is so that you can participate in our government.
right,
Critically think, make decisions for yourself in your belief systems, and you are being trained at a very young age to be able to make those decisions for yourself in
right,
our government. So that's kind of the way that I always looked at, you know, getting into education, was to make sure that students understood why they're taking part in this, what the purpose of it is, and going from the football standpoint, um, know why we're here.
right.
Know the why. Understand the why. And whenever you know why you are doing something, you will do it much, much better.
Facts. I have always stated, and I'm an English guy. Lord, man, I could write a paper, drop a hat, just love that side of things. And I have always said, whether it's books, movies, whatever the case is, the what is never fascinating without the right why.
Oh, yes, sir.
And man, the why eh, has to be such a thing, because whether it's religious beliefs, whether it's your priorities, your convictions, whatever, man, if there's not a why,
Yes.
I can talk you out of pretty much anything unless you have a right why.
Yes.
Anyway, man, I could get stuck there for an hour with you. That's good stuff. Okay. Um, I'm dying to hear this story. You and Miss Donetta, one of the most happy. I remember there was a picture of you, and I looked for it to do the Facebook announcement today of the podcast. And man, there were two options of a picture of you because again, you are off the grid. It was either the one I found of you that I sent to you, or you're kind of doing the point thing, or I think it's the win over Kingston, and the boys dump the water bucket on you. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay. But there's another picture of you. I saw it way back when. It's right after I think it's the win against Kingston, and it's you and Miss Donetta. And man, you don't even know your picture's getting taken, but you guys are the happiest together. It's so awesome to see.
Yeah.
That happiness is a thing. What's the story, man? How do you all meet?
Well, I guess it was September, the first year that I was at Sunbright as a freshman. So,
Really?
yeah, yeah. That is, it just, whenever we started dating our freshman year and pretty much been together ever since.
Wow, high school sweethearts. That is amazing. So you okay, did you guys attend the same college or what happened after high school?
We went through Rome State together, but her program that she had went through, she did medical transcription, which was a program. It ended in probably 1992, so she was working about a year before we got married. And I had to continue on working my way through and got finished with Rome State in '93. So after I got finished with Rome State, that's when we got married in the summer of '93. Yeah.
So I got to know what was it about Miss Donetta
Ah.
that you look at and dude, I'm hitting you right in the heart. But
Buddy,
you just
that's
you look
there.
at
It
her
just
and whether it's physical or whether it's all of it, but man, not only do I need her for now, I need her for always.
yeah, and that's it. Just I, you know, it is the whole package. It's everything, and you know, I really I can't say much more than that other than getting choked up. She's just she was just that one.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I love that, and I love your heart. Your heart says more than your words, and I appreciate that a lot. Um, and again, to watch you guys, and not just you guys as a marriage, but you guys as a home.
Yeah,
Her with the boys, and just when I met Miss Donetta, so much of my knowledge of Coach Shannon made more sense because I'm watching how good she is with all these kids, and I'm watching how great she is with her kids, and I'm like, holy cow,
yeah,
she's the pepper to his salt. She's that. I
yeah.
get it. I'm with it. So you guys have three boys.
Yes.
Um, was three boys the goal, or what was the thought process there?
Well, I would have loved to have had seven,
Yeah.
but she after we had our third, um, she said if we keep having kids, we're going to keep having boys, and I'm like, well, that's wonderful. And she had lived through these three, and I guess we were getting a little older, and she started doing the math, or we're going to be this old whenever they're this old, and we're going to be going through, and that was just pretty much it. But God has blessed us with three very, very wonderful young men, and it's been a joy. So, and really, she is the glue that has held it all together.
Yeah. And your boys, what are the age differences between the three?
Um, let's see. Houston is the oldest. He's 10 years older than the youngest, and 3 years older than Heath. So,
Okay.
yeah, Houston was 10 when Cole was born. Heath was 7 when Cole was born. So
Okay.
now they
Now,
are 28, 25, and 19.
good gosh. Don't do that to me. That's
Yeah,
bad.
buddy, it goes by fast. It surely does. Um, but they're all fine young men, and that's what um, I can remember coaching them. Houston and Heath both played high school football on teams that I was a coach of, head coach of in some instances, and I always told parents of players that had played for us that I'm going to coach your son like I'm going to coach mine, and then I would follow up with I coach mine hard, because I wanted them to be men, young men, good young men, Christian young men, and so accountable and trustworthy, and that's what we have strived to do with our sons, and that's what we always tried to do with our football teams.
Yes, sir. And I am a product of that. I say yes, sir. Was there for it, lived it. I know, and you're telling it right. Um, and this is an agreeable statement. Watching, you fall in love with your wife as a human being, and that's awesome. And then you see her, the mother, and that makes that love so much stronger and deeper, as I'm sure it is in your case as well. Um, but you've got these boys and parenting them obviously as individuals, but they're adults now.
Yes.
Speak to, how your parenting has evolved as they've went through different stages in their life.
The thing that you become a more understanding uh, son whenever you become a father, because some of the things that my father was going through whenever I was young, I look back on it now and I'm like, oh, I get it, and so it's there's not a finish line for being a father, or being a good father. um, the responsibilities, the roles of a father might change and alter, but the main thing is just for me, and I know from my wife as well. We just want to be there for our sons, be supportive of our sons, always be prayerful for our sons, and whatever it is that their lives are going through and in that moment, and just help them if we can, guide them or help them along the way. That's what we intend on. But I think that being very, very prayerful with them in their lives is a big thing right now for all of us, as we've got adult sons that are going into this world and making their way. So that's just how it has evolved, and you know, um, I guess it's and again I'll go back to football. Um, the football teams that I coached, that you were on some of, um, it's almost a microcosm. Whenever those football teams came together early on, in the preseason, in the off-season workouts, in the preseason camps, and scrimmages, that was a hard time. That was a physically demanding time. And that's when I was the hardest, pushing, pulling, coaching, prodding, bringing our players along to try to realize that level of expectation that we had. If we've set goals, we've got a vision of success, we've set these goals for ourselves. So we get that team to the point that, and you remember the goals for our football teams were always winning seasons. We want to be successful. We want to win more than we lose, and we want to go to the playoffs. Now, the time for the playoffs, that's as a dad. That's when my sons are grown. They're adults. As a football coach, if you remember those playoff weeks, is a different Coach Shannon.
Oh,
You
yes.
know, we're gonna stand back and we're gonna let the leaders of our football team, the leadership is gonna guide us this way because they're gonna take us where we want to go now. It's time for us to kind of take our hands off of the wheels. And we're still going to do the, the game planning and calling the plays and everything like that. But the leadership of the direction, it's going to go as far as they're going to take us. And so that's what I've kind of tried to instill in them, is that it's time for them to take leadership of their house, of their lives, and take it to greater places. So.
That's awesome. That's good comparison. I love that a lot. Uh, and man, the whole playoff scene. Uh, if there's something I miss about Tennessee, in Indiana, everybody makes it to the playoffs,
Oh,
and and I can say this, my podcast, I can say it. I think that is, if not that's one of the top three worst things in the world. I just do, and I don't mean that in the world in general, but in the football world, because it makes the season meaningless. When everyone can go, everyone's going. It eliminates the whole, the banners in the school where, hey, first round playoffs, first
yeah.
team to go in X amount of years.
Yes.
Um, I miss that. It's hard to instill the seriousness of the season. So yeah, I get that 1,000%. Um, so um, you start your coaching career at Sunbright, right?
Yes. Yes.
You come on as an assistant,
Yeah, actually, I started. I I had told you that I was working in the factory
right?
at Wartburg whenever I was still going to college, and you know, I wanted to get around athletics. I wanted to get around sports again. Get around it as a young adult. So. Um, I went and interviewed, and the editor of the Morgan County newspaper did not know that I was interviewing. I just took off on my lunch period one day whenever I was at that factory, and went and told her, "You don't have a sports writer, and I need to be that." So that she hired me, making the same money that I was working in the factory. And then I was able to get into these high schools and get to know some of these coaches, great coaches, all around Morgan County, and just, kind of pick their brains, at different times. Very, very successful people. And, getting to know them like that. So I enjoyed that for a couple years. And that led me into um, being an assistant little league football coach,
Ah,
which is in 1990. I guess it would have been 93, something. Yeah, around 93. I had done that. So that was freshman and eighth grade football. They called it midget football at that time. So that was my first year there, 93. 94, I went up and was the JV coach at Sunbright. And then 95, I was hired on as a full-fledged assistant coach. So, and that's kind of my path getting into it.
that's awesome. That's amazing. When you said little league, I was thinking like what we know little
Yeah.
league as today.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's eighth and freshman then. That's neat. Um, so you come on board as head coach in 1998.
Yes.
Um, you did you play college football?
No, actually, and like a lot of young men, uh, I dreamed of it,
Right.
and I actually went to NAIA visitations to Campbellsville, and was looking at possibly going there. Mom and Dad was going to send me, but whenever I realized that if I went to play college football, I was going to be on the Harvey and Judy Shannon scholarship program and
Right.
be paying my way, I decided the best thing for me was to be as cost effective for my parents as I possibly could. And that meant going to Rome State and being able to work my way through to help them. But, but no, I didn't get to play college football, and I'm okay with that. the opportunities that I had to work in those factory settings that I was in was wonderful, and it probably did as much to help shape me as a man as anything.
Yeah.
Um, but once I got into coaching football uh, with the high school, I fell in love with both the art and the science of coaching football.
Right.
And the science of football is the strategy, the X's and the O's, the moving the pieces, game planning, and where do we attack, where are they weak, where do we need to work on to get better with us. And then the art is, how can we help this young man to become a better man and be a better football player? How can we help him to learn to invest in this group effort that he's going to put so much into, and there is no guarantees of success?
Right.
Because whether we go 10-0 or whether we go 0-10, the process is exactly the same. There's no difference. So, that's whenever I was in 94, 95, 96, that's what we were working with and developing. And then in 97, things turned around at Sunbright. We got had a breakout year. I was the offensive coordinator in 1997, and we started off that season 7-0. Was averaging 44 points a game and was just, world beaters. Um, Fell on some hard times at the end of the season. Some injuries hit us and things, but I was hooked at that point. Whenever we saw that success, I was hooked.
Yeah. And I mean this as a compliment. Um, watching you coach, man, I can still remember eighth grade day coming into Scott High's field house for the first time, and watching you and practice, and then obviously playing for you. Um, man, if you would have told me then, hey, he didn't play college, he didn't XYZ, you are literally the definition of a student of the game. That's you to a T.
Oh yeah,
And you are bringing, and this is just not because I'm talking to you. I've told people this about you. You are bringing the knowledge of the game, but more than that, you are able to communicate that. And it's one thing to know it, it's one thing to live it, but to be able to communicate it, that's a whole other thing. And um, and you had the passion for it. That there was so much about you as a coach, and I mean, you're still coaching? Was is in my perspective, um, that was very contagious. Your passion, your excitement, but your communication was so easy to understand. Like, I can remember guys that had never touched the pigskin, never been on the field, and you are literally breaking down detail by detail, foot
yeah,
movement, eye placement, hand
yes,
placement, and you've got guys that couldn't get in a 4 point stance in the spring that are now, hey, they're, second team
yeah.
gaining on first team.
Oh yeah.
And I don't put all that on you. Obviously, you can't coach effort, you can't coach heart. That's the player. But dang man, go you for being a student of the game.
Oh yeah, and that's the art of it. Again, is going back to you know what kind of relationship can we build with this young person to get them to invest in this worthwhile endeavor that much more. And um, but yeah, to your point there, the student of the game, that is the part of the game that I had missed prior to getting back into it, is when we would go to clinics, and we would always load up my Toyota Corolla, and it didn't matter if I was at Sunbright, and Sunbright at Scott High, you remember it, Scott High's rival is Kingston. At Sunbright, the rival is Coalfield. Well, I was a student of the game, and I didn't care who was in the back seat of the Corolla. So I'm heading to Atlanta, and I've got a car full of football coaches, and I look in my rearview mirror, and two of them are Coalfield football coaches.
Yeah.
Those are that's our arch nemesis, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? But it was just because of the love of the game, the love of learning the game, and good football is good football. And anytime we got into a clinic, our staff, whenever we go, we're going to be professional. We're going to sit on that front row. And in my head, anyway, I always, um, there is something that I can learn from every person that is presenting at a clinic or
Yes.
in a lecture. I can learn something and take it back and make our program that much better. So it was a wonderful thing, and it really is. It's a good job. I just love it. I do.
Before we dive too much into your first run at Sunbright, and this is not on the subject line because you and I haven't talked a lot about this, but you've mentioned it, sprinkled it throughout in this chat. Your faith. You were raised in church, and
Yes.
you've talked about God blessing your home, your marriage, being prayerful for your boys.
Yes.
And again, the only reason that's not in the subject line, you and I have never had a one-on-one chat about faith. How big of an importance? How big of a role? I shouldn't say importance. How big of a role does your faith play in your life?
It's uh, it's everything. It's the hope, the belief in the Almighty, and just the fact of the free and simple plan of salvation for us gives us hope for brighter and better things that are bigger than us and what we've got going on right here. I pray for wisdom, and I pray for a lot of things. So, for just from me and the way that I process things and the way that I've tried to have my boys learn and understand is, there's two types of things that we deal with. There should be things that we worry about, and then there's things that we pray about. The things that we worry about are the things that we can change here on our own. The things that we pray about are the things that only God can change
Sure.
and that He's in charge of. Which, so that's the faith of God Almighty, of Jesus Christ coming to save our souls with this free plan of salvation is awesome, and it is something that just has been an important part of my life, and my prayer life. I love long car rides when I'm by myself because I can pray a lot and do.
Yeah. Yes, sir. And I remember Thursday nights at Scott High. After you have your Thursday walkthrough, Thursday practice,
Yes.
and then you've got devotional. I'll never forget. Coach Gary Sexton came and preached one night to us, and he preached about if you are a Christian and whether and you remember Coach Sexton when he would come, he's not just preaching to the boys, he's preaching to everybody.
Yeah, man.
And if you are a Christian coach, if you are a Christian player, this is your ministry. Here is your ministry.
Yes.
So and I'll never forget Coach Shannon getting animated during devotionals wasn't that often of a thing. But when he said that, I'll never forget. Coach Shannon stands up and says, "Yes." And it's one of those things where the light bulb clicks of guys, what you're doing here, you are making a difference in people through God. So don't just look at it as the pigskin or as helmets and hits in
Yes.
college and all
Yes.
this stuff. This is ministry.
Yes.
And I love that. Absolutely. You are handed the keys of Sunbright High School.
Yes.
And so what does it look like for you as far as putting your first staff together?
The it was a surprise whenever I got to be the head football coach at Sunbright. The the whole situation that happened, and the head coach was very successful in '97. 7-0, 7-3, lost in the first round to South Pittsburgh, who had Eddie Moore, big time Tennessee football vol, was on that team, and we went down and played their tails off. Had our opportunities and lost in a close ball game. Some things happen, and the head coach is removed in March, just before the next spring football season or practice starts, and it was a situation that I'm a Sunbright guy. I'm at the school that I always dreamed of. And I knew that if I didn't go in and offer my services to the principal, who was my former head coach, Don Edwards, um, that we very well might, suffer through a regression of our football program. So, and sure enough, the head football coach that was removed was very, very, very popular with the players. So we go out there in spring football, and I've got probably 3 or 4 of our best players. They're not going to play for anyone other than the guy that had just left. And the probably the best coaching job that I ever did was the first scrimmage that we had there in that spring football. We had, and York Institute,
Yep.
Derwin Wright, the head coach there. You want to talk physical, you want to talk football, you talk to Derwin Wright at York Institute. They were our scrimmage opponent, them and Jellicoe. So they come up, and we go out there and we go at it one Saturday afternoon, and that's at the end of the first week of spring football, and we're coaching our tails off, and we end up in a 2-2 tie with both of those programs. And that night I come in and I fall up on my chair, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, I was just spent. The phone starts ringing, and those kids, one after another, they're coming back and they're going to play for us again. And so that next season, we were able to replicate the success that we'd had in '97. We go 7-3, we go to the playoffs, and it was a young team. So then in '99, we're really starting to take strides then, and our program is getting better. We're getting more quality wins against higher levels of competition, and we can feel ourselves as a program ascending to a higher level. And that's where, finally in 2000, whenever we go out and really accomplish something in the undefeated year, win the district championship, that was, a culmination of what had started back there in '98, whenever, we were just holding on by a thin thread. But that kind of set us up on a good path, that is for sure.
Right. Looking at your time at Sunbright from 91 to 2001, um, if you were going to say, hey, I want to wrap my entire Sunbright first run up in a few words, what would it be?
And that would be tough. But just the commitment to the process of building a winner, and it was the commitment to the process. It really, and it's hard to even verbalize whenever I reflect on some of the things that we were doing. And you guys, I'm sure everybody in the world that's a football person thinks about, the Remember the Titans.
Yeah.
We took that 2000 team to football camp at LMU. And when we got there, what you saw, and this is pre Remember the Titans, what you saw on that was what we did.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
it was brother, it was brutal. But now those kids were so committed that what we were doing was going to matter. And, so we go through that and just worked them and pushed them and drove and pushed. I've told the kids that had played for us there at Sunbright, the coach that I was at Scott High was very different from the one at Sunbright, because I had that span of maturing in between Sunbright and being the head coach at Scott High. I was rough on the kids at Sunbright. I pushed them very, very hard. We practiced very, very hard. And then whenever, we'd get out on the practice field at 4 o'clock at Sunbright, and we'd practiced until 7:30 sometimes. And then I'd tell them I'd see them in my classroom at 8 o'clock, and I'd have snacks there. And I'm kidding you not. We'd be on the dry board, and we'd be, 8:15 sometimes, 8:20. And then on Thursday nights, whenever we go out for the same practice that we had at Scott High, and whenever that practice ended, we'd have our devotion the same way that we did at Scott High. But then at Sunbright, we would do a potluck dinner. The parents would bring in the food, and then I would turn all the freshmen and sophomores loose. And then the varsity kids, they would go with me back up to the football field, and we'd turn the lights on, and we would stay until it was perfect. Just offensive line, and you being an offensive lineman, you understand this, and it's just the way my mind worked. I knew whenever we're seeing a 5-2, this needed to happen. I needed to see it happen. And I've heard coaches say it, and I didn't understand this is what we were doing. I didn't want them to do it until they were perfect. I wanted them to do it until they couldn't do it wrong.
Right.
Just repeatedly, over and over and over.
Natural.
And usually, 9:15, 9:20 on a Thursday night, the night before a game, I was sending them home. That sounds insane, but brother, that is what was going on at Sunbright in 1999 and in 2000 in the fall.
So, I've got to ask these boys that are a part of this, and we'll just call it Remember the Shannon. Forget, remember, this is Remember the Shannon, brother. You know, when they see you now or when they saw you after they graduated, basically what you're doing there from 98 to 01 is you're in the process of making men, and you're teaching commitment. And so are they coming up to you and saying, "Hey, I get it. I appreciate you. Thanks, coach." Or are they, printing death list and you're at the top of the list like, "Man, I'll kill this guy next time I see him."
I worried about that. I did. But I've run into them, and I live in Sunbright, the community of Sunbright. But amazingly, I've seen very few of them over the last 30 years or 20 some odd years and stuff. Just because, I'm spending a lot of my evenings and things in Huntsville and in Scott High. But over the course of the last several years, as some of the parents of the players have unfortunately been passing and attending some of those services and seeing some of those players that were friends of some of the other players and coming in, I've actually went up and apologized to a few of them, because they know, how and don't get me wrong, it was never anything more than just, this is the way that we're going to do it. This is how we're going to do it. And this is why we're going to do it. And we do it. And I've apologized to them, but they're like, "Hey, ho, 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 ho." One kid in particular, young man, he's 42 years old now, or older. He's like, "Hey, that's why we had the success that we had."
Right.
There's no complaints. There's,
Right.
the memories that we built, the things that we did and accomplished for a good span is unparalleled in Sunbright anyway, football history, and very proud of that. But at the same time, to your point, I've worried sometimes that I might have pushed a little too hard, But, we've learned, I guess, over the years that, whenever you're drifting a car, sometimes you take the foot off the accelerator, and just kind of glide around with it.
Yeah.
Um, Back then it was pedal to the metal
Yeah.
100% of the time.
Yeah. So I've got to ask for the last. Remember the Titans reference. Are you Coach Boone?
I would imagine. Yes, I would think that I am, even to the point that I was running with them. Uh, Chase, we loaded our weight room up and we took it to LMU and we set it up in the parking lot.
Wow.
And we would get them up at 6 o'clock in the morning. They would come down and they would run for about 20 minutes with me. Then we would work out. We would, of course, do our speed and plyometrics that you know about. Then I'd turn them loose and we'd go eat breakfast. By 8, we were jogging the half a mile to the practice field. We'd practice for about 2.5 hours. We would jog back to the dorm. I'd give them a little bit of time off. We'd get ready for lunch. They'd go to lunch. Then we'd load them on the bus and we'd take them back for an hour special team practice. Then we'd bring them back. And then we would end the big practice, after dinner, which was at about 5, and we'd give them about 30 minutes. 6, we were jogging back to the practice field and we'd practice until dark. And then we would jog back. And that was the day. And that was tough. And we did it from Sunday to Thursday. And there wasn't anywhere to hide. There were no cell phones back then.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. So, in case anybody's wondering, Coach Shannon is Denzel Washington's stepbrother. It's Denzel Shannon right there.
Well,
Uh,
I can only tell you that is the truth, 100% of it. And any kid that was on the 19, or basically, we did it from 97 all the way till 2000. That was the way that it was in Sunbright.
so, a couple things there before we leave Sunbright. You have this rigorous, committed. I'll say committed. Rigorous might not be the word. Committed practice schedule, committed camp schedule. Okay, it's one thing to have the boys to buy into that, but to have coaches buy into that.
Yeah.
What I mean, was it a struggle getting the coaches to
Nope.
buy in? Because once they come out on the field, hey, we're all united front. Does not matter what happened in the office. We are united front when we hit the field.
Oh, yeah.
But behind closed doors, is it, hey, this is a bit much. They have a life. Or are we just, hey, coach, we're following you?
Honestly, I never took the time to question if they wanted to be a part of it. They better punch their ticket and get on because it was going to be good. If they didn't, then it was mind over matter. It didn't mind and they didn't matter. Okay. But we always had, whenever I was at Sunbright, and we're talking about a school that had 180 students, 180 students, we typically had anywhere from 8 to 9 assistant football coaches on my staff, and they were committed. They were there. They were working. They believed in what we were doing. And, only 2 of them ever got any money for it. 2 assistants. The others, they were just there because they saw the worth in what we were doing. And, I go back to Lee Coleman,
Mhm.
because the success that we had at Sunbright could not have happened without Lee Coleman. He was an assistant coach for me when I was a player. And my first year there, whenever I took over, I took them to football camp myself. Actually, took them to Copper Basin High School, me and 2 other assistants. And I saw very quickly that I was going to have to be more involved on the offensive side than I thought, and I needed some help on the defensive side. So I went and talked with Coach Coleman and begged. And then I went back and I begged him some more and finally convinced him, with the help of his lovely wife, Louise, to come back and help football coach. And the things that Coach Coleman was able to do was amazing. We took a program there at Sunbright, and the mindset that we had was that we were going to be physical in the run game. We were going to attack on special teams, and we were going to attack on defense. So we were zero pressure, and that was Coach Coleman's world. In the year 2000, we gave up 54 points in the entire season, and 22 of
Wow.
those points were by JV.
Wow.
Marshall County was the number one scoring defense in the state of Tennessee for the 10-game season, and they gave up 53. So we gave up one more than them. And Coach Coleman reminds me that it was those JV kids that we put out there that. But he's a legend. He's a legend in East Tennessee football coaches circles of people that know and respect the job that he did during that time. And another side note too, my head football coach came on and was an assistant football coach for us that 2000 season as well. So I had both of my high school coaches as assistant coaches for me while I was at Sunbright.
That's amazing.
Oh, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Uh, and man, I apologize for hanging on to Sunbright so long. You talked about having a few star players that weren't going to play for you at first, and then they came
Yeah.
back. Coaches, we do our best to recruit, and we walk the halls, and we'll talk to this one, talk to that one. If you don't work in the building, we'll go and talk to kids, other sporting events or whatever. How much of recruiting would you say is word of mouth by the boys?
Oh, a lot. You know, you and we talk to our players, even present day. It's about what we're selling, about what we're doing. And I guess it's human nature. Some people see it as that, but I always talk to our players then and even now. Don't be an awfulizer. And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Well, whenever you go up into the building, you don't tell them everything that's going on down here is awful. Oh, the
Right.
workouts are awful. Oh, practice is awful. Oh, it's hot. It's going to be awful." We don't want to convey that kind of message, because then, the more the merrier. We want more players, so we don't want to do that. So that's really the big thing, coaching the kids how to recruit other kids. But at the same time, we better be minding our own backyard and taking care of the kids that we've got. Make
Right.
sure that they know that they are valued. Make sure that they know that they are a part of something that is bigger than all of us, me as a coach or them as a player. It's the group effort. And it's an inviting culture, that we want these kids to be out there. And, talking about football compared to other sports. And, that's, goodness gracious, we can play 11 guys on offense. We can play 11 guys on defense. We can play 11 different guys on special teams. We can make a lot of players feel valued and special and important because of their role. And then whenever we start getting into really talented teams, maybe we've got two number ones as defensive tackles, and we
Right.
can rotate through and we can play a lot of kids. So that's something that we were doing back at Sunbright is, we're going to make sure that kids are involved. And therein lies talking about coaches even, too many times whenever I go onto a practice field, with young coaches, you'll see a lot of groups of coaches standing over here talking. And then you'll see a group of kids standing over there not doing anything.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
guys, the coaches are not benefiting, the players are not benefiting. Just break out and do drills or structure practice and things like that. And so that's how the recruiting of players, I guess, was always paramount for us at Sunbright. I would take the yearbook every year. Every year I would take the yearbook and I would go through the classes, juniors on down to 8th grade. And I knew who we had on our program, obviously. But then I was looking at those young men and I'm like, who can help us? Because if they could help us, I'm calling them every week. I'm
Yeah.
going to visit, mama and daddy. I can remember me and my cousin, Bill Dennis, we would get in the car on Saturday mornings and we were knocking on doors and getting kids out of bed to come in and sit down at the dinner table with mom and dad and us, talking about high school football and how it could be important for them and help them. And that's how we built a program there, and the culture is how we got the culture there. And as a player at Scott High, we recruited our halls, we recruited our school often, but we
Yeah,
always recruited the kids that we already had in our program. Always let them know, we need you to be a part of this to be successful.
absolutely. And I'll speak to that myself. I stepped away um, mid junior year. Whether it was ministry related, I'd started in ministry when I was like 12, or whether it was just a lot of things going on in the background. Um, you know, I'll never forget that meeting that I had with you. I went there for literally what I thought was going to be a 10-minute meeting. And again, man, I loved the sport, loved everything about it. There was nothing, um, football related, and
Yeah,
loved the coaches.
yeah,
There was a lot going on behind the scenes. And I went there for a 10-minute meeting thinking I'm going to be able to look my coach eye to eye and say, hey, I appreciate everything you've done. Stick out my right hand, shake hands, maybe a hug, tell you I love you, and walk out, and we're good. And that meeting took every bit of an hour
oh yeah,
plus. And like, I didn't expect to cry. I didn't expect any of that. But, I get done with you, and, because you've got to go to practice. I showed up 2 hours before practice
yeah,
because I knew you all would be there. And I get done with you. I turn out of your office, and Coach Jackson Sharp standing right there.
yeah,
And there's another 20 minutes right there. And I have used what he told me, with so many players and so many teams. Coach Jackson, the one of the only things I remember him saying to me, he looked at me and he said, Chase, I literally remember you when you were in fourth grade. And he said, you have never been taught how to quit. And he said, you've never been a quitter. And he looked at me, and I saw him recently. I was in Scott County, and I asked him if he remembered it, and he didn't remember saying it. And he said, quitting is the easiest thing to get good at. And he just looked at me and he said, be careful, and I love you. And he gave me a hug,
yeah.
and I went to walk out, and there was Coach Lambert.
There you go.
And he looked at me, and man, I didn't even know you guys had communicated. And he grabs me by the shoulders and he said, Big Lay, what are you doing? What are you doing? And man, he cried, I cried. It was a mess. And he said, and I honestly felt like I was in church at an altar call. And he just looks at me. He said, Big Lay, if I was you, I'd wipe my nose, I'd dry my eyes, I'd walk back in Coach Shannon's office, and I'd tell him, Coach, I'm sorry. I'm an idiot. I'm going to play for you. And man, at that time, I couldn't. And I shook hands with him, told
Yeah,
him I loved him, but, and love him obviously to this day. But, if there was one thing I left there knowing, you're valued, because if they didn't value you,
yeah,
that's literally an hour and a half they took out of planning for practice. And man, the last thing I remember hearing, I stepped out. We had a team meeting there in the film room. And very first thing I hear Coach Shannon say, men, we've got some planning to do. Chase Lay has decided not to be with us. And there was a pause, and he said next. And I stood there and I listened to you go over, this is what today looks like. And I was like, all righty then. And it was just the moment of looking at the team saying, we're addressing the problem, but we're not going to live in it. We're moving on. And I forever have appreciated not just your value of people that didn't play or stepped away, but your value of the people you have.
yeah. and the separation of teams and players, because you never know what a young man is going through outside of that facility. Whatever is going on in their life and in their world, I will never and hopefully never minimize that. I just always, whenever any time that a young person come in and they chose to not be a part of what we were doing, I would do everything within my power to make sure that they knew that they were wanted and needed and welcome. But ultimately, if they chose to separate, then it is their decision, and I wanted them to know that I still loved you as a young man and for you as a person, and but at the same time, we've got to pivot now,
Yep.
and the people that we're working with, we still got these goals, we've still
Yep.
got these expectations, we've still got to get these things accomplished, and that's how we were moving forward at that point. But now I can tell you, it was a tough ride home that afternoon
Oh
whenever
God.
when
Yeah.
we didn't have Big Lay with us, and you was such a joy to be in the weight room and in the football facility. We loved it, loved being around you, and missed not having you for sure. But I understood, and so many other players over the 30 some odd years or whatever it is that I've been coaching. I always, and later on too, I always made sure and ask them, is there anything that I've said or done to cause you to want to walk away from this? And by and large, I've never had anything at least come back that it was, and I certainly hope that I've never done that, because the game of football is so important to me. I love it. I love being able to share it, and it's been so good for me, to be able to go through my adult life and learn so much from the game, being able to teach so much from the game to young men throughout this time. It's been a joy. It really, really has, and I surely don't want to cause anybody any ill will for the way that we do it. I
Well,
worried about those kids at Sunbright back in the '90s, but now they've all given me high fives, so we're good.
well, just know from Chase Lay standpoint, your thumbs up from me.
Awesome.
And it was one of the craziest things. I had Coach Lambert on a few weeks ago, and I tried to make it a funny story because on my end it's hilarious. And bless his heart, he kind of felt bad about it. He was D coordinator at Scott High, and man, we just came out of Team D, and it was as intense as get out.
Oh yeah.
And we had like a minute water break, and I was on a knee, and I went to get up, and I said, "Good God!" And Coach Lambert was yards away from me, and he came sprinting at me with that big finger up, and he said, "Big Lay, don't you ever let me hear you taking God's name in vain. You hear me?" And I told that story because it's freaking awesome.
I
And
remember that.
Lam-
I do. Coach Lambert is an awesome person and a wonderful coach.
yeah,
And he's just a joy to be around. As a coach, getting to know him. So many of our funny stories from coaches and stuff like that involve Coach Lambert. He's an awesome, great guy.
he apologized and he said, "Chase, listen, this just a few weeks ago on the podcast. Chase, listen, I'm sorry. Okay. I mean, God is good, and
Amen.
we don't need to take his name in vain, but I'm sorry." And I said, "Coach, I thought it was hilarious, buddy." Hey, you are officially through the Sunbright stage in the subject line. Um, I would love, and you are exactly at 90 minutes. Here's the options. Obviously, we're going to part two at some point because there's way too much left. If you would like to get started in Scott High and then break, I'm great with that. Or if you'd like to call it here and hey, we'll pick up Scott High later. I'm good either way.
Buddy, I'm good. You can, whatever works best for you, Chase. I'm talking football. talking stuff that I love, buddy, we can keep talking, or we can pick it up another time. It's really up to you.
I tell you what, give me till 9 o'clock.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Give me that's 25 minutes basically. Give me that. 2002 comes along, and you take up a district job. What were you doing when you took? What is your job title in 2002?
Um, it's funny story. Dwight Murphy, who's the president of the TCAT now, was the county executive. He had written a grant. Gary Sexton was involved in this grant, and Tony Zachary was involved
Yes.
in this grant. Wonderful, wonderful human being. Um, and you know, uh, who knew? People pay attention when you do a good job. And I had done a good job at Sunbright, I feel like, and Dwight Murphy felt like that I did as well, as his family had went to Oneida school. And, one of those years we'd beaten Oneida, and another year we should have beaten Oneida, and he kind of respected it. So he was starting a new program. It was the recreation director, or Scott County Recreation was the name of the program. It became, during that time, Scott County, the Boys and Girls Club of Scott County, or Scott County Boys and Girls Club of
Okay.
America. So that was the precursor to that. So I had, was hired as the director of that program, the initial director. And Gary Sexton worked with Huntsville. Tony Zachary worked with Fairview. Mike Carroll worked with Robbins. They were site directors. We had Tanya Crabtree. Now it's Miss Tanya Bond, who was
Yep.
at Birchfield, and Christy Cornelius was at Winfield, and those were all of our site directors. And we started the program that became the Boys and Girls Club, and took had after school activities for students. We took them on trips around different places, and it was a lot of fun, and was able to grow that program. Presented it to the B.R. Thompson Foundation and the Appalachian Life Quality Initiative. They called it ALQUI, for funding that would turn that recreation program into the Boys and Girls Club, and was able to do that presentation in that summer. But I had already gotten the itch that I was getting back into coaching.
Yeah, absolutely.
you
And
know,
that's an amazing group of directors
it
too.
was.
And
Yes.
again, to plug Mike Carroll, love him, dear friend, such a high respect for him. And Coach Tony Zachary, out of this world, love that man to death.
Yes.
I remember I was thinking about today because I told a couple Coach Zachary stories this morning with Coach Gillum. Coach Zachary had been out of coaching for a little bit, and then you were able to get him to come back as D line.
Yeah.
And I think we were going into camp, so one of the poor freshmen, bless their hearts, Coach Zachary's trying to high five people as they're running from one station to another, and everybody's giving Coach Zachary high five, and one poor freshman didn't realize, he's just trying not to die, and left Coach hanging, and Coach Zachary, he was being light, he wasn't being serious,
Yeah.
and he said, "Young man, you get back here right now. You get back here right now. When Coach Zachary's hand is up, you slap it. Do you understand me?"
Sounds just
And,
like it.
and, and Coach Shannon yells out and he says, "You don't leave. You don't leave Coach Zachary hanging." And Tony chimes in. He says, "No, I leave you hanging."
Oh, that's funny. That is funny.
I love those guys. But you come back. When do you come back to coaching?
Well, actually, I never missed a football season. I missed an off
Okay.
season. So I had started work as the recreation director actually in the '01 football season, midway through it, just meeting in the weekends and things with that list of directors that we'd went over, site directors, and Mr. Murphy. And so once Christmas came around, I resigned from the Morgan County school system and took that job. And again, it's with a lot of prayer that I had entered into that, because I knew my world was getting ready to change in a big, big way. But I've always been prayerful in these kinds of decisions, and if God opens up a door, I'm going to be bold enough to walk through it, and that's what I did, and went into that position, and it's a wonderful experience. I enjoyed it very much. Got to know the people in Scott County a lot, and that is when me and Coach Sexton started talking football, and the next thing I know, Scott High's position is open, and me and Coach Sexton was talking about it, and um, I remember he said, are you interested in that position? I said, no, but I'd be interested in being an assistant coach for you if you took it. And next thing I know, we're all working at Scott High School, and we're getting ready for the football season there in '02.
That's awesome.
Yep.
So you are under Coach Sexton for his
Yes.
duration there,
Yes, for his second stint there.
right?
Yes.
Speak about being under Coach Gary Sexton.
It was a great time. Now, we struggled for different reasons at Scott High at that time, and public school football is public school football. Sometimes you're going to ride the crest of wonderful, wonderful talent and schedules that allow you to build for success. Other times, your schedule may be so out of this world that you could have the best football team that you've had in the entire history of the school, and you're going to be 5-5.
Right,
Just because of who we have to play. This, and
right.
so it just so happened that whenever Coach Sexton got it that second go round, we were very, very young. Um, and the schedule was brutal, and it stayed that way for a long time just because of the district opponents that we had. Um, but the thing that I will say is I'm not competitive compared to Gary Sexton. Gary Sexton is the most competitive person I have ever met in my life, and Tony Zachary may be close to second there. Those guys though are wonderful, wonderful Christian men. I learned a lot and enjoyed the time that I was with them working and coaching. Coach Bill Hall was a part of those staffs as well, and we were 5-5 in '03. I think '02 we were 1-9. One in overtime against Gibbs to snap a 20-something game losing streak for Scott High. And shouldn't have beat Gibbs, but we did. And then the next season, we were 8 points from being 8-2 in '03, and just really, really good football. And then, you know, we struggled for the next couple years, and then of course Coach Gillum comes in '06, I think.
Yes, yes, he comes in '06. Man, I have to comment there and say, um, I was blessed. I was in Scott County in Revival a couple weeks ago, a few weeks back, and there were some of the football boys from Scott High that went to that church and was like, "Hey, we're having practice in the morning," and they didn't really know me. They just knew I'd said something about coaching. Hey, I
Yeah,
came, and a few of their parents was like, "Hey, he's Scott High alumni." And was like, "Hey, we're having practice Saturday morning. Do you think you could stop by?" And I said, "Well, I said I'd love to because I love Billy."
yeah,
I said, "But that's his practice, his world. I'm not interfering, and you don't need a mess load of bodies just standing around." And I called Billy on the way home. I was like, "Hey man, got a random question for you. You're having practice in the morning. I've not got to be around my boys all week long. Like, is there a world where I can just come and you don't even have to include me? Don't point at me and say, 'Hey, that's Chase Lay.' Just let me be the random brown guy standing on the field." And he said, "I'll do you one better. I got a D line coach. It's his first year. Help out some."
yeah,
And he said, "Get in the thick of it." And I did not know that Bill Hall was coaching. And I've heard the legendary stories about Coach Bill Hall, and holy cow, man. And I told him, I made some jokes about it, to see him in that role.
yes, sir.
I was just in awe. And I came up to him at one point in the practice. They were in a break, and I leaned over And I said, "Would you sign my forehead?" I said, "I'm seeing Coach Bill Hall
Yes.
as Coach Bill Hall.
Yes.
Man, just electric."
He you know what, that personifies it right there. It's the other day at the office, he called me in and was showing some of their scrimmage tape from the spring, and different dude. Yeah, I mean it's different, just like that. You know, he's in the zone and he's going through it and he's seeing things and spotting things and coaching things as we're going through that film. So it's awesome. And that just never leaves. It doesn't matter if you've been coaching for 4 years, 5 years, or 30 or 35 years, as the case in mine and Coach Hall's resumes, I guess. That doesn't change, and he's an amazing coach. He really is, and I
He
know that
is.
Coach Billy Hall is an amazing coach, and they're getting ready to get that program on the right track in a hurry. I saw them on film.
Oh
They're pretty
man.
darn good. They're pretty good.
And what's so infectious, and I'll be honest, and for Scott County viewers, this is probably going to sting a little bit. Man, as far as having the itch to move back to Scott County, man, God's placed me where I'm at, and it's not one of those things of, hey, Scott County's in my rear view. Coach, I just know God's got me where I'm at,
Yeah,
and my focus is here.
yeah,
But man, I had a 2 hour practice at Scott High under Coach Billy Hall, and that energy
yes,
is so real there. And I'm not throwing shade, under Coach Josh Terry or anything like that. But man, they've caught fire, and it's a rebuilding fire. And man, and I told Coach Billy, I texted him and I called him afterwards, and we talked about it. I said, just continue, just continue. It's all you got to do.
oh yeah,
And man, and I talked to Coach Bill Hall about it, but could not be. And I listened to your comments at his press conference when Coach Billy was put in, and I'm telling you, he's the right man for the job. He
he
just
is,
is. He
he
just
is.
is.
I agree with that, and it's a long storied history of that team, that program, and he'll do well, and he'll do the program proud. So everybody is happy for him, but more importantly, we're happy for those student athletes that get to enjoy being a part of the program. So we're excited to see what they can do.
And man, and I'll tell you where I want to end. I want to end with Coach Gillum, but to put a bow on Coach Billy Hall, um, watching him interact with the boys, and he's coming off this college football career, and I've never seen him as a coach. The last time I saw Billy, he was little,
Yeah.
and but okay, so is he going to be more football minded? How's his connection with the boys going to be? Man, they love him.
Oh,
And he is so good at not just communicating football, but he's good at communicating real life. While I was there was a couple boys that had a couple boo boos, a couple bang ups, and he handled that so great.
yeah.
It was almost like he had an awesome coach all his life. And, it's, I can't say enough, and I know it sounds like I'm applying for a job, but I promise, just him, he's doing a great job. Can't say enough. 2006, Coach Davey Gillum comes in, and he is coming from Pikeville College, is
Yes.
what I want to say.
Yes.
You are already there. He brings in his brother. He brings in Aaron Bass. He brings in, I think there's one or two more, but he keeps you, Coach Zachary, and others right out of the gate. First impressions of Coach Davey Gillum.
It Coach Gillum was, he was a gifted coach the day he walked on campus at Scott High School, and we all could identify with that. We could see that. I shouldn't say identify. We could see that in him. So we were excited for everything that he was bringing to the table. And it's very different the brand of football that he brought. And I'll be honest with you, I'm coming from a background as an offensive coordinator and as a head coach at Sunbright. We were ground and pound. We were spread to run.
Right.
We were spreading out formations. We're going to run the veer option, the midline option, anything in this world that we could do to get numbers out of the box is what we're going to do. And so when Coach Gillum comes in, and it was the spread passing that he brought, the quick screen game and things like that, and the cerebral approach to the passing game and the pass protections and things like that, the likes of which I had never saw at that time. And I come to love and appreciate and very, very much respect what he did. And Coach Sharp, which, as became a passing game guru and an offensive genius in my mind as well. He gravitated towards that as well. And it was just amazing. We knew, though, Coach Sharp and I talked about it. Scott High School was the tip of the spear for bringing spread football at the level at which Coach Gillum brought, a college level, to us, and we grew that with that. And Coach Gillum, and I'll tell you this. I think that the job that he did as the head coach in 06 might be one of the greatest jobs in coaching in Tennessee football history.
Wow.
Because, and it's just my opinion,
Right.
The talent level, we were, and I am not going to say the talent level was, we were young. We had freshmen and sophomores. Now, Coach Terry, Josh Terry was the quarterback, and I think we had maybe 4 seniors on that group. And then everybody was freshmen and sophomores, and we were playing the powers that be in East Tennessee in AAA for a football. And to go out there and pull a 4-6 record and competitiveness that was amazing. I was proud to be on the staff, and I can tell you I learned so much football from Dave Gillum. I never dreamed that I would learn as much as I did in so much of a short period of time as I did whenever I worked with Coach Gillum. It was wonderful.
Wow, that's an amazing thing to say. What would you say? Obviously he is enforcing is not the right word. He is implementing his football mindset, his football personality, his coaching personality
Yes.
for those 3 years. What was it like watching him grow as a coach and watching, your freshmen, sophomores for those 3 years adapt more to his coaching mentality?
It again, we were so much involved in it. I liken it to, we couldn't see the forest because we were looking at the trees.
Right.
We were neck deep in it. So it was just happening so fast that really you couldn't appreciate it until after it was passed. I guess from that standpoint, but to see those young men go out and compete with, and of course, Knox Fulton is a powerhouse in Knoxville area in the state of Tennessee, and at that time when they were having Dennis Rogans and those people that ended up playing at the University of Tennessee rolling through, we it was a stretch to compete, but Coach Gillum in his implementation of his system, in his play calling ability, in his mindset of the game, I watched him go out, and in a half of football, we're playing them toe to toe. In the entire game, it's toe to toe. But really, if we don't have some bad things happen, we're getting a W right there with them on Scott High's field. So at that point, all of the years that I had coached against Fulton, they'd been zero pressure, just pressure, attack, attack, attack. By the time Coach Gillum's screen game got with them, they were in zone.
Right.
And Robbie Black and his father, uh, Coach Black, had come across the field, and they said in all of the times, and they had won multiple state championships at that point, nobody had ever made them go zone, ever.
Wow.
Coach Gillum did. And those group of boys that bought into what he was selling, they made them go zone. And if they hadn't have went zone, we're gonna beat them by probably a couple touchdowns.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's the thing with Coach Gillum, and just very, very respectful of his knowledge of the game. Obviously, a state championship winning coach, and a program building coach, but more importantly, the Christian man that he is, and was then, is now, and
Right.
always will be,
Right.
and the leader of men, of young men, and teaching them how, this game of football just supports the growth of a young man, and I think that that's the tool that we all are trying to use this game for, just to support the growth of a young man.
Right. To end on a football note, you are when Coach Gillum comes along, are you D coordinator?
Um, I was the defensive coordinator his first year.
Right.
In '05, actually, Bill Hall was the defensive coordinator for the first portion of that year. Then Coach Hall's uh, had to step away. I think that there was a family issue, maybe a sick parent there. And then Coach Sharp and I kind of stepped up and worked together to coordinate the defense that last couple ball games of that year. And then the following year, I became the defensive coordinator in 7 and 8. And I had been the defensive coordinator for Coach Sexton from '02 through '05.
So speak to this because this is interesting, and I was going to save this, and I'll probably revisit it when we come back to um, you and Coach Lambert working together. But this is earlier in your career. You've been a head coach. You've been a successful head coach. Okay, but now you're the coordinator. You're bringing a level of knowledge to the game. You're bringing your own coaching mentality to the game. Speak to the working relationship of a good coordinator and a good head coach.
Well, you know, to be honest with you, I was not a good coordinator, honestly, and I'm being very, very honest. In hindsight, whenever I came to Scott High, I was not necessarily a very, very good coordinator. I had a lot to learn. And, the good thing about being at Scott High, I went to the School of Hard Knocks,
Right,
because whenever we see the kind of play that we see from Austin East, from Vic King Kingston teams, from Anderson County Larry Kerr teams, from Knox Catholic teams, from Fulton teams, my coaching deficiencies was magnified in front of everybody. So whether it be Coach Sexton or Coach Gillum, they allowed me to learn, to work through, to process through, and get better. And they tolerated mistakes that I made as a coach, because they knew that I was working as hard as I possibly could to get caught up. And it took a while to get caught up. Um, because again, going back to Sunbright days, we were pressure zero, and we were coming. We were zero coverage, man up. We're coming, but that was the game then. We were okay. The game changed whenever you get to that next level, if you will, um, and especially when the screen games and things like that comes along. So, but Coach Gillum, he and Coach Sexton allowed me to game plan, to work with some great people, to grow there. And then I really felt like probably '07, '08 was the two of the better years that I had done as a coordinator. Um, we really, really, really got competitive at Scott High. In '03, we were very, very competitive at Scott High. But '07 and '08, we were 5-5 both years. I would say 4 out of those 5 losses were probably the top 5 teams in the state of Tennessee at that
Right.
time.
Right.
But and we were in there slugging it out with them, and I was still growing and learning a lot as we went. But that relationship between a head coach and between a coordinator, um, it's you've really got to trust that person, because whenever you're breaking down one side of the ball and you're trusting them to break down that side of the ball, their side of the ball, whether it be offense or defense, you've got to be able to trust them with your life. I mean, and I know that's not a great analogy, but that's kind of the way, because in our
Yeah.
football life, it's that it's, and I always felt like that those men did, trust me. And again, though, they tolerated the mistakes that I made, and I can go back and watch them in film. I know I made them, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing about it is you don't know what you don't know until you know it. So
Right.
now we know it, and it's just, it was what it was. But he was very gracious. Coach Sexton's very gracious with me as a coach, as a coordinator. And again, to a point that we had said earlier, we're always a student of the game.
Right.
And I was learning the entire time, and still have much to learn, because the game is constantly changing as well.
Right. Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. Man, to be honest, I could easily go another 2 hours with you. I have enjoyed this to no end. Um, and again, for everyone watching, Coach Shannon has much more to get to on the subject line. We need to pay to give proper attention to the rest of his time at Scott High. So much meat left there on the bones, and then his career is going to continue to evolve. And listening to his discussion there and what he's doing now, and then there's a homecoming on its way for Coach Shannon. I didn't know this until today. He will be blessed to return back to Sunbright. So there's so much left, and I can't wait to dive into it. I want to make sure that I'm fresh to stay in tune. He's fresh to tell it, and you're fresh to listen. I can't wait for it, Coach. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to sit down with you. I'm excited about the future. I'm tickled death to see how much you're enjoying life right now, enjoying everything that God's blessed you to put your hands on, sir. Any comments or anything you'd like to say before we sign off?
I've just enjoyed getting the opportunity to talk to you today. I can see that your life is going very, very well. I'm happy and excited for you as well. So, thank you for thinking enough of me to reach out and just have a conversation. And brother, we'll do it again anytime. All you got to do is say the word.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. And I've got to, as soon as I get off here, I've got to season and grill some T-bones for my wife. It's vacation week, so we've got to celebrate. We're leaving Thursday night for Orlando. But anyway, Coach, I appreciate you, sir. Thank you for giving us your time. I love you.
Hey, love you too, brother. And we'll see you soon.
All right. See you. Good night.
Good night.